The future belongs to those who dare, those who will do extra. Hi, I'm Mark Croskery. Welcome to Business Live Extra, the program that looks beyond dollars and cents to the movers and shakers in business and the capital markets. Today's guest is Jamaica's diplomatic representative to Ireland as the Honorary Consul from Jamaica. He has a first-class honor degree in electrical engineering from University College Cork. He also has a diploma in business management from the College of Ireland and a diploma in board direction from the Irish Management Institute. In his early years, he worked mainly in the high-tech sector as a senior technical and business development consultant for companies such as HP, IBM, Motorola, and Ericsson before co-founding Vero Solutions, a massive data company called TheNowFactory, which was sold to IBM for 115 million euros. He is probably best known in Jamaica as a former CEO of Digicel Jamaica. Have you guessed it yet? Joining us today is Barry O'Brien, co-founder and managing director of Williams Caribbean Capital. Barry, welcome to
pleasure, Mark, to be
Business
here.
Live Extra.
Really looking forward to this, Mark, so pleasure to be here.
It's good to have you on the show.
And thank you.
Yeah. So Barry, you're back in Jamaica. How often though?
I try to get back as often as possible. I mean, COVID has made things a little bit more difficult over the last number of years, but I would hope to spend a few months here each year going forward.
Great. And how would you define what you're in now? I mean, is it private equity? Is it an investment company? Or since, let's say, Digicel, you've pivoted into, how would you define what you're in now?
A number of things. I mean, one of the primary things I'm in, it's an impact investment company, and we're sort of concentrating on efforts we can do for global warming. In particular, we're looking at things like renewable energy, PV, solar, wind, biomass. But another part of my business is our private equity type businesses, and I can give you some of the history. Is sort of interesting to actually understand where that actually came from and things. So,
and what's kind of the difference? We hear a lot about renewable energy, climate change, green bonds now, in the marketplace. But between like impact investing and private equity, is it different? Is it the same thing, or how do you classify it?
We have them sort of separated into two businesses in reality. So my main business here in the Caribbean is a business I co-founded back in the middle of 2017 with another actually ex-Digicel colleague called Kieran Burke, and that is called Williams Caribbean Capital. And it's a joint venture with a BARBADOS conglomerate called Williams Industries. And that's mainly been involved in the renewable energy sector. The key thing that it has been doing is it has been issuing certified and rated green energy bonds.
Right.
And it's been using those bonds, which are debt instruments, to actually fund PV solar. An awful lot of those installations have been on large commercial rooftops. And the second side then of the activities I'm involved in is a company called IFP Investments Limited. And that's more a private equity type business where we pool the number of investors' monies, and we've been investing in various private equity. A lot of those businesses we try to target are in the ESG space as well. And one of the key areas which we can go into a little bit of detail on is in the food packaging areas, looking at sustainable food packaging solutions.
And Barry, on that point, I see so many entrepreneurs, investors, that whole acronym, ESG, is out there a lot now. Many board meetings, directors get confused by it. What is ESG? Like, what does it stand for? How meaningful is it to you? But what really does it represent?
I mean, for me, really, it's something that I felt passionate about for many years, and I sort of more focus on the climate change side of things, and hence that's the whole renewable energy side of things, and what impact our businesses can make on basically the climate for the future of the planet, basically, and so what small little bits we can do, and so hence, I mean, there is a sort of a greenwashing type of concept out there as well, and what is green and what isn't green. So I mean, a lot of what we have been doing, we've got rated, certified green energy bonds, which are proven to be green. We conform to sort of various aspects of the International Capital Markets Association and certain aspects of the Paris Accord. Hence, what that all means is that all the projects we do are certified by the global bodies, basically, as being green, give investors sort of the confidence that they don't have to do their own due diligence to prove that our projects are green. So definitely on the ESG side, I am focusing on the renewable energy side of that as well. On the sustainability side, we invested in a number of food packaging businesses which were primarily advocating replacing some plastic type solutions with paper and aluminium type solutions. So one of the companies is a business called Irish Flexible Packaging, and one of its business products was sort of paper aluminium foil. I suppose one of its best known products would be the wrapping that goes around Kerrygold butter, which is a global brand.
That's a product we even see here in Jamaica.
It's a product you see here in Jamaica.
I think Caribbean Producers Jamaica, which is listed on the stock exchange, distributes it. I think so, I'm not sure. But you see it a lot in the supermarket in Jamaica now.
It's become the #2 butter in the US, and it's #2 in Europe now. So it's become a massive export out of Ireland. And the company that we owned up to November timeframe actually does all the packaging for that as well. And there's another product that's sustainable as well, which is wax paper that we invested in a company called FizzPack actually, which is another Irish
and so these are like your portfolio companies,
These are portfolio companies, and I suppose history might put some of this in context actually, Mark, whereby as you said in your introduction there, I think what people know me best for in Jamaica is as a former CEO of Digicel Jamaica. And then sort of in the beginning of 2017, I left actually Digicel. And I decided after a period of time that it was time to try to do something myself. I had this entrepreneurial sort of instinct inside me. And I went out looking for capital here. I mean, the original ideas I had was around forming a private equity type company. And we went to raise money in the markets that I knew best, which was Jamaica, as being a CEO here. And I'd also been CEO previously of the Eastern Caribbean, based out of Barbados for Digicel. So we looked at raising money there. And eventually we formed a joint venture partnership with a company called Williams Industries, whose chairman is Busy Williams.
And I was going to ask you that. I remember in those days, you're hitting the road, you're doing road shows, in different countries in the Caribbean. And why did you end up, let's say, choosing, Barbados or, let's say the Eastern Caribbean? Was it kind of where the anchor investor was, or was it, as you said, Busy Williams or Ralph Williams? But what took you to Barbados? Yeah,
in certain respects, I mean, when you come from a background, I spent 9 years with Digicel, and I had almost exclusive being a CEO from the time I got there back in the beginning of 2008, actually, when I originally took over running Digicel Barbados. And it was really where I had the contacts, actually. I had a choice after leaving. Should I go back to Europe or should I remain in the Caribbean? I very much liked the Caribbean, had built up a profile in the Caribbean. I also had headed up a lot of mergers and acquisitions for Digicel and sort of...
And is Digicel what brought you to the Caribbean, Barry, or were you in the Caribbean before?
Digicel is what brought me to the Caribbean, actually.
So they kind of like headhunted you? Is that kind of how the vibe worked?
A lot of things that happen in life, are circumstance, actually. So, and I was heading up a company called Vero Solutions, which we were selling to IBM at the time. And I went to a Chamber of Commerce event in Ireland and bumped into a guy called Leslie Buckley, who was the vice chairman of Digicel. And coincidentally, while over dinner, he said to me, would I have any interest in relocating to the Caribbean? There was a job opening to be CEO of Digicel Barbados. And at that time, I was sort of half thinking maybe, the end of Vero was there, IBM were coming in, was there a point in being involved in a post-acquisition and things? And but I didn't actually think much about it for about 3 weeks, actually.
So it was really a relationship, just a relationship happened?
It was a relationship thing happened, and I had this sense of adventure in me already, in that, I had originally gone abroad when I was 26, and over a 20-year, or actually over a 25-year period, I actually spent 21 years abroad, actually.
So I guess, as we say in Jamaica, some links, and it worked out well. Any regrets?
No regrets whatsoever, except for the fact that when we were actually selling Vero Solutions at the time, we were talking to a company, and they were looking at a sum of somewhere around 20 million for the company at that particular moment. When the company actually eventually got sold to IBM, actually, the number ended up at being 115 million. So I suppose the only regret was the potential sum of money that I've left on the table actually, at that particular time.
Were you actually, you mentioned, were you actually a shashareholder in that company at the time?
I was a significant shareholder. I was the founding CEO. So it goes back to my sort of, I started off my career as an engineer, and I spent the first few years basically sort of involved in a lot of the protocols of how telecommunication systems worked. I worked with IBM, I worked with Motorola, I worked with Hewlett Packard, as you pointed out, and things. And so by the age of 26, I decided to go out and do this myself and became an independent consultant and sort of toured the world and things, and spent a lot of time in Europe, actually. You know, I was with Rohde and Schwarz and Siemens in Munich. That's where I met my wife, actually, as well.
Okay. And so, Barry, when you look back at it, you know, you gave up a percentage of this, you know, let's say roughly 95 million euros. But, you know, do you look at the opportunity cost and say, whoa, I gave up a lot of money, or you've made some fantastic relationships and lifestyle in the Caribbean over the last, say, 15 years or so? I mean, how do you look back at that whole period?
Absolutely no regrets. Absolutely no regrets. I mean, we've had a fantastic time in the Caribbean. My children spent 9 years here, went to school here. We've made an awful lot of good relationships, and you know, we've learned an awful lot too on it. And you know, Digicel was a great place to work as well. I mean, it is a sort of a slightly changed company now, but it was a very good place to work. My children sort of have this fantastic, broad type of attitude now of having, because we lived in a number of countries. We started in Barbados, then we moved to St. Lucia, then we were living in Jamaica for about 3.5 years as well. So, you know, they got this great cultural diversity as well.
Yes.
And so there's sort of no fears in them any longer now when we've sort of gone back. And I think that was very good for them. So I wouldn't change anything as the point. And just the lifestyle in the whole Caribbean, it's a great lifestyle. And, you know,
phenomenal. Yeah.
And there's an awful lot of connections too, you know, between the sort of Jamaicans and the Irish. And I think we sort of naturally feel at home with each other actually a lot of the time.
And so to your point, when you left Digicel at that kind of inflection point, was it natural to you? I mean, you're an engineer, you then work in an executive capacity at Digicel. What made your brain kind of pivot to say, I want to go into finance, or, you know, whether it's, you know, private equity, whatever you call it, but what made your brain to say, I want to go, you know, own my own business?
Yeah, it was interesting. So I'd spent 15 years as an operational CEO, managing other people's companies. And, you know, from the TheNowFactory, taking that from 2 people to a company that exited with 115 million, or the sort of Digicel Barbados. I took it from sort of mid-30 market share to 60% market share. Then got appointed to sort of the big job up here running Digicel's headquarters. And I also looked after Cayman and multiple other businesses. And, you know, I think by the sort of 2015 time frame, when I was sort of, I would have been sort of early 40s, 43 maybe at that particular stage, a role came up in Digicel. Digicel had looked to float on the New York Stock Exchange. You probably remember.
I remember that, yes.
Back in September 2015. And the feedback from the markets at that particular moment was that Digicel's revenue base just wasn't diverse enough. And
you mean it was too concentrated in Jamaica?
In voice, actually, was the actual issue.
Oh, in voice.
In voice, rather than being a quad player in sort of different segments and things. And hence the IPO was withdrawn from the marketplace. And so where the relevance to me here actually is that I was appointed then onto the senior management team, moving out of the Digicel Jamaican role to try to diversify the group's revenue, basically. And
is that kind of what spurred all of these like kind of acquisitions in fintech and media and everything?
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. So if you know, I mean, you probably remember some of the acquisitions here, even in Jamaica.
Okay.
I mean, the first acquisition I bought here was actually Telstar, which was to get into broadband.
Ah, okay.
And then we bought Sportsmax to get into media, you probably remember. Then we bought Paymaster, which was to get into payments and things. And we bought a company called Spectrum, which did a lot of the billing systems. We bought a lot of the clearing houses across the Caribbean. We bought a company called Boom out of Florida, which was going to help us with international remittance and things like this. And it was really, the whole purpose was we wanted to become a quad play player. So we wanted to be in broadband, TV, media, and financial services. And the difference between this was really the difference was between getting a 6x multiple and a 10x multiple for a business that was $1 billion EBITDA. So you can just see the significance of the valuations of the company. So come 2017, I'd successfully done that for a number of years. And because I sort of got into sort of, you know, raising debt, buying businesses, and sort of understood a little bit more how it all worked at this particular stage.
You're like an investment banker during this whole phase.
Exactly, and a lot of it was that, you know, you got heavily involved in how the leverage worked and the debt worked inside Digicel, and, you know, how we actually set up separate boards and things for some of these businesses, and how the actual bondholders were evaluating the businesses and things. So it was an education, and it led to me looking to do this myself.
You know, did you actually get passionate about starting to like do due diligence on companies, evaluating companies, and not just running companies?
I got passionate about building companies by acquiring them. So I saw Digicel's literally financial services business go from the sort of October 2015 from 0 people to by sort of the second month of 2016 with 1,400 people in that division from zero. And it was all through acquisition, sticking a load of different parts together and sort of going, here we go, here's something new we're bringing to the marketplace. And it just seemed exciting, and a lot of it was done through leverage as well. And I sort of was sitting back there going, you know what, I could do this on a smaller scale myself, actually.
Terrific.
And hopefully, you know, bring something back as well, because I also saw sort of how this could work for the whole community and things as well, and what you could actually bring to Jamaica and some of the other markets actually by doing this.
That is, yeah. It's good. We're going to come right back to that and talk more about green bonds as well.
Okay, excellent.
We take our first break on Business Live Extra. More when we return. Welcome back to Business Live Extra. Williams Caribbean Capital, WCC, was founded in July 2017 and is an impact investment company with a focus on renewable energy asset development and private equity. The company also focuses on food packaging solutions and impact high potential startups. WCC's strategy is to invest in businesses that create a positive economic impact and long-term value for investors. WCC is a joint venture with the Caribbean conglomerate Williams Industries Group. The company's investments include VIP Attractions, Williams Renewable Energy Limited Barbados, General Accident Barbados, and IFP Investment Limited. WCC is headquartered in Barbados with offices in Dublin, Ireland, and right here in Kingston, Jamaica. Here with us is Barry O'Brien, co-founder and managing director of Williams Caribbean Capital. Barry, welcome back to Business Live Extra.
Good to see you again, Mark.
Yeah. You know, how did you get all this started off? You know, well before Digicel and everything. What were your early days like? Where did you hit it off at university, college education to become, you know, the engineer?
Yeah, it's sort of funny it goes back so far. But yeah, no, I would have been a very sort of mathematical-minded person growing up, and so I sort of played in the Irish chess team. I was into maths. I sort of wrote my first sort of heavy computer program when I was 10 years old and things. And so I was always going to do something in that sort of mathematical engineering background. And I was notorious at home for taking apart every motor that we ever had in the house and sticking it together in electronics. So I decided to do a degree in electrical engineering, which I did in my local university, University College Cork, Ireland. And
and is that like a, you know, like a bachelor's degree, or is that like a bachelor's degree plus some other degrees and practical experience, or how does it work in Ireland?
It's a 4 years bachelor's degree. I mean, the Irish system is you typically sort of do your school leaving exams, which are the same maybe as the A-levels, are at about 18 years old, and then you go on and do a 4-year primary degree. And so that's what I did. I did a 4-year primary degree. And after leaving college, I got a job actually as a programmer actually with IBM, which is what I thought I wanted to do to begin with.
But it's not computer engineering.
I did electrical engineering. But I had this passion as a young man, actually. I mean, literally when I was sort of 10 and 12 years old, I was writing quite sophisticated code. And this was back in the days of, I had an Apple II, actually. I was the first computer
I mean,
I had.
you are known for sure as an extrovert now, but when you were a young man, you know, is it that you were kind of an introvert, let's say? I mean, not generalizing you, but when you were younger, were you just really, you know, hitting the books, doing the schoolwork, you know, in this computer system?
It's interesting you'd call me an extrovert, which is probably a reasonable characterization.
I mean, the perception of you, I mean, is that...
No, I was a bit of both, actually. I would have worked very hard as well in school. I think from a very early age, I had this work hard, play hard type of attitude, and right throughout college as well. And I started off in a technical roles as a consultant, as I mentioned, touring Europe. I got into a niche, which was the communications between telecom systems, and I really got such a grasp of it that I was getting jobs everywhere at really huge rates. And this is back in sort of the dot-com boom days. Now,
and those were full-time job offers, or these were like contracts?
No, these were all contracts. So I was typically working on 2- and 3-month contracts, and
okay.
And I did that for a number of years.
But good cash, good payments, you know.
It was, you know, for a sort of, I suppose, I did it from the ages of about 26 to about 30. For a person of that age, it was ridiculous money, actually, the way I looked at it. And,
yeah.
I lived in hotels and toured the world, basically. It was great. But when the dot-com bubble burst back in sort of 2000, 2001, I decided that, you know, I was going to take a complete change in my career. And I took a job as the head of business development for an Italian PLC called Accotel. They had a subsidiary actually in Ireland called Gini Software. And what Gini did was it produced messaging systems for mobile telecoms. So all of a sudden I went from being a techie to being out there as a pseudo sales type guy actually, which was an interesting thing to do. So I toured the world selling messaging systems for the next sort of 2 years actually. And I think that's where sort of the sort of idea of, I like this actually customer interface. Maybe this is a better place for me career-wise actually to be going. And in one of my travels, I went to a conference and bumped into an associate of my former boss in Ericsson's, and he said he had a startup company. It was going to be all based around protocols, looking at the air interface protocols to optimize mobile networks. And I think you'd be an ideal fit, is what he said to me. So I gave this guy called Tom Morrisroe a call, and lo and behold, that was the beginning of my general management career, which was Vero Solutions. And for the next 15 years in a row, I was in a sort of a general management CEO role.
And Vero Solutions was a pure startup, or it was something that was pretty, you know, humming or, you know, existing at that point?
Absolute pure startup, from 2 people basically to a company of 180 people. We did that in sort of the first 3 years, and it was actually the first product we had actually wasn't the product that we actually eventually went to market with. We sort of pivoted from being an optimization tool platform to being a big data company.
Yeah.
And the vision there was interesting because we were sort of far ahead of the game of what Google and some of the other big data companies did. We were looking at a certain interface on mobile networks, and we were looking at what people's traffic was on those, and it was the prelude to actually targeting people with targeted ads based on what traffic they were looking at. And big data was the sexy thing in those particular days. This is and
it's funny because, I mean, I know it's a different type of data, but, you know, of course the phrase big data now is such a big word nowadays too, or a big phrase.
But back in those days, it was the in thing. It was, you know, AI and big data were the sort of 2 areas.
Even AI now, you know.
They're still around, obviously. Yeah. And you know what? I headed up a big data AI department actually inside Digicel as well. So that was one of the babies I had underneath me as well. And we were doing similar as well, trying to... we were looking at everything from people's creditworthiness based on their telephone calling patterns to... where best it would be, say, to situate a retail outlet just because of the traffic that might go by based on where phone usage is going. It's incredible the amount of information that mobile telcos have.
And you kept that pretty quiet at Digicel in those days, I guess, probably strategically.
Well, I mean, a lot of it was in those days, it was fairly R&D for us in those days. I mean... So
like just in-house
It was in-house. Yeah, I mean, I remember doing one huge project, actually, and it was based off some technology that T-Mobile had come up with. And because there was no credit bureau in Jamaica, we had problems with postpaid contracts and things but there was a study done showing that based on people's call patterns, who they call, whether they're on social media, whether they travel or not, you could actually more accurately predict their creditworthiness than you would from somebody like Expedia. And so we built a system around that. So when people went into their shops, we had them literally based on their mobile phone usage.
On
that sole criteria, the whole theory was that we could decide whether they were creditworthiness and whether to give them a fixed.
Interesting. And definitely you seem like you're onto something there. Yeah. And you know, and Barry, if we flash forward to today, right? You know, it's never easy to break in as an investment company, but you know, people forget WCC Williams Caribbean Capital is only 5 years old. Let's say, and you know, you've made inroads already. You've grown the brand. You've made inroads into Jamaica with, you know, deal with VIP attractions, other deals. You know, how have you been successful in 5 short years already?
Yeah, I mean, some of it was obviously using, you know, the experience that I'd gained within Digicel and other businesses, and I had a vision to start out with, and you know, for any entrepreneurs and budding entrepreneurs, you know, you start off with an idea and a plan that you're hoping to implement, and you've really got to change and be prepared to pivot when that plan doesn't go exactly according to the way you actually want it to go. So in my case, I mean, leaving Digicel in sort of early 2017, I had this idea I was going to set up your vanilla sort of limited liability partnership 220 private equity type model. We were going to be the general partners, myself and my business partner, Kieran Burke. And we were going to raise money from limited partners to buy businesses or invest in businesses. And so we started off here in Jamaica, actually, and got close to raising some capital here. But as part of this fundraising process, we pitched to Busy Williams, who was the chairman of Williams Industries, who also happens to be a shareholder, actually, in Digicel Barbados.
Okay.
And during the middle of the pitch, he said, Barry, you know, you did a good job for me in Digicel Barbados. I will give you money, but I want to do this together. So that's where Williams Caribbean Capital was born out of. It wasn't where we actually had decided to go. So rather than now becoming a limited liability partnership, we became an investment business. So we put in money, he put in money. And the first actually venture we were going to do, which is interesting too, was a pan-Caribbean media company. From my Digicel days, you get a lot of the large advertisers would come to us and they'd be looking for deals that they can, or pan-Caribbean deals. There was no pan-Caribbean media company, effectively. And I'm talking now outdoor advertising, digital media.
What do you call a pan-Caribbean media company?
Yeah,
like, is it
a company that a Coca-Cola could come and sort of go, I want to advertise in Barbados, Trinidad, St. Lucia. I'm going to give you one pocket of cash.
One-stop shop.
One-stop shop.
Okay.
So we were buying 6 different media companies and I'm probably being a little bit too broad. The media company we were looking to buy here actually in Jamaica was NOA at the time, National Outdoor Advertising actually at the time. And
kind of, you know, timeline as this would have been like what, 2018 or?
No, this was just after forming the company. So this would have been sort of late 2017 type time frame. It was actually September 2017 because So I came up here to close the deal, actually, to acquire NOA. Digicel owned NOA, actually. And the reason I knew a lot about NOA was it was one of my portfolio companies within Digicel.
Yes.
And the day before we were due to buy it, actually, I gave my good friend and another former Digicel CEO a call, a guy called David Hall. And we sat at the bar in the Deck pub, if you remember it, on Trafalgar Road.
Okay.
And we had 2 or 3 Red Stripe, and I asked him what he was planning to do with VIP, and he said he was looking for investors because he was going to expand the business. And and I said, you know what, I know an investor who'd be interested in VIP. And I said, that's where it all actually began. So that was our first investment.
So is it that the VIP deal was just a better deal at the time?
It was a better deal than the NOA deal.
Okay.
And you know what, in hindsight, I should have probably done both.
Right.
But because it's your first deal, I hadn't raised enough capital, but subsequently, when I actually discussed this with other people, there would have been more capital available if I had actually...
Maybe, and you probably knew the owners better sector, a couple of different...
I was more comfortable with the deal. You know, it had been a very... I mean, David and his business partner, Carlos Malion, had done a tremendous job in that business. And let's face it, it's a tremendous business, full stop, actually. So it just seemed a great fit for us at that time. And so then come 2018, we were sitting there and we sort of spent our capital, and the deal for VIP closed sort of in early 2018. And I'd done a lot of work.
And you're still a shareholder in VIP today?
Still a shareholder in VIP today, and that's Williams Caribbean Capital as a shareholder.
The WCC.
WCC,
Great.
yes.
All right. When we come back, we're going to talk about some more of your deals and your portfolio companies. We'd like to hear it, Barry. We take another break on Business Dive Extra. More when we return with Barry O'Brien, co-founder and managing director of Williams Caribbean Capital. Welcome back to Business Dive Extra. Since foundation, WCC has raised over $50 million in debt financing. For the year 2021, the companies that Williams Caribbean Capital invested in had revenues in excess of $40 million with over 500 employees. WCC was the winner of the Best Finance Award at the 2019 Caribbean Renewable Energy Forum and the New Pioneer Award at the Global Climate Bonds Initiative Awards in London in 2020. WCC is still the only issuer of green energy bonds to fund renewable energy projects in the Caribbean. Still with us is Barry O'Brien, co-founder and managing director of Williams Caribbean Capital. Barry, welcome back to Business Live Extra.
Thank you, Mark.
You know, it takes us to, we're going to talk about more about the portfolio companies, of course, but just green bonds and this whole topic of green energy. I have not seen any companies in the Caribbean, much less Jamaica, be successful in green bonds or just even understand this whole green energy topic. You know, how have you got this green bonds financing done? Is it really difficult? I mean, how have you made it work for you and the WCC team?
Yeah, I mean, when we were looking at our business plans and models, I firmly believe, and maybe it's something for any entrepreneur here in the Caribbean, that, you know, there is no real need to reinvent the wheel actually on anything. You know, there's enough sort of successful business models out there globally that you could bring to the Caribbean, and that was really how Digicel was founded as well. We brought a tried and tested European type model actually over to the Caribbean. So we were looking at how to fund sort of renewable energy projects, and I looked out there. I had some experience on the bond markets from my Digicel days, and how we could fund certain projects without actually going the commercial debt routes, or without having significant volumes of actually the equity. And so we looked at the sort of the green bond market, and the most staggering fact I actually found out when I actually started looking at them was that there is over 1 trillion, 1,000 billion US of green bonds having been issued globally. And then I came to sort of why weren't any of these green bonds issued in the Caribbean when the Caribbean has naturally some fundamental great aspects, most noticeably, I suppose, the intensity of the sunshine here in ours. But it's true. I mean, some of these bonds are being issued in Ireland and various other places. So we looked at models actually from many countries, and in particular, actually, I went back to my home country, actually, of Ireland, and there was an organisation there called the MTMA, and they were issuing 3.1 billion of sovereign bonds. And how they were doing it was they were basically finding the projects, and then they were taking those projects to a rating and verification company in the US, and then they were getting them certified in London. And I just went through the process of how we could actually do this, and I came to the conclusion that, you know, if we really wanted to start something successful, we should start up at the platinum level, try to achieve what was expected on a global level, not reinvent the wheel, and that's how we came up with the actual green bonds markets. And so how this actually works is we identify projects, PV solar projects.
And are they only in Barbados so far to date, or any other Caribbean?
Barbados and St. Lucia at the moment, and we have identified and recently secured 10 million's worth US, I'm talking here, of projects here in Jamaica as well. And so that's why I'm in Jamaica at the moment.
And are the bonds issued in, say, the local, let's say, sovereign country? Are they issued in US dollars, or?
In the cases of all the bonds we've issued so far, they've all been issued in local currency.
Okay.
So what we do is that the process is we find the projects, and we do the business models behind all those projects. And then we take the entire business model to a rating company, an ESG rating company. And the largest ESG rating company which we have used in the US is a company called Sustainalytics.
Okay.
And they look at our business plans and they do an analysis on them. And then they verify that our projects conform to certain aspects of the green bond principles of the International Capital Markets Association. What that means is it's all got to do with selection of the projects, reporting of those projects. And the reporting is an interesting one. It's not only financial reporting, it's also heavy CO2 greenhouse gas reporting. So then they write a second party opinion on our bonds, which says, yes, these projects are green in our opinion. Yes, these guys have set up the business plan for us, makes sense. And armed with that second party opinion, we take it to the largest certification body in the world, which is called the Climate Bond Initiative.
And Barry, when you look at, say, you know, Jamaica future project, what you've identified, but let's say Barbados, St. Lucia, what type of size or magnitude have you deployed there so far through these, you know, green bonds? Green bonds.
So the first issuance we did, and the first program we did was in Barbados, and that program was 23.5 million. Was the actual first issuance.
In Bajan currency? In
the Bajan currency, yes.
Okay.
And then we did another issuance of 34 million Bajan currency.
Okay.
And so we've been progressing. They're the type of sums. I mean, we've primarily been deploying, and the projects, PV solar projects, have been primarily putting PV solar on large commercial rooftops.
Okay, rooftop.
And there's a number of huge advantages actually to doing that. Actually, One, it doesn't upset the transmission and distribution networks of the utility, because typically the power is used by the building that they're actually put onto. So that's a great advantage.
And are you doing, I mean, do you do the installation, the full works, or you're just doing kind of the structure, the financing?
We are more just the financing. So we find the projects, we raise the debt for the projects, and then we create the RFPs for the EPC PV solar companies to actually do the installation and maintenance of those. We obviously have preferred suppliers. I mean, in the case of our Barbados installation, Williams Industries, which is our JV partner, has a company called Williams Solar.
Okay.
And but the model in other markets is you put it out to tender, you vet basically the potential partners to actually install them and maintain those systems.
And the upside, though, so in cases like that, you're finding unique blended financing or unique financing. The upside now for Williams Carbon Capital, are you charging some management fees, or there's some typical, fund fees or something like that?
Yeah, that's exactly how we fund ourselves. You know, what we do is we find a partner who wants to put solar onto his rooftop. So we will typically create a special purpose vehicle with them, and that special purpose vehicle will own both the debt and the assets being the PV solar that goes on top of them. And Williams Caribbean Capital then charges a management fee basically into that SPV. To actually manage it. And that's also, as part of the bond program, we obviously as a bond trustee, we're obliged to do actually quarterly reporting. And so you've got a bond trustee who's acting on behalf of the bondholders. And then we have annual audits, which we use PwC as our annual auditors. But we also actually, for the ESG rating company, Sustainalytics, we need to do annual post-issuance certifications as well
for them.
And some of that is the financial reporting, but a large part of it is actually verifying that the CO2 emissions that we said our projects were going to offset are actually verifiably so.
And what's the long term? I get the private equity side and the portfolio companies, but for energy or renewable energy, is this a long term play for you and WCC where you keep investing in this? You go to different, let's say, countries in the Caribbean, or you want to keep going deeper into renewable energy or other parts of renewable energy outside of solar? Or what's the long-term vision for WCC here?
The vision is more of the same on the solar side, but also expanding into different areas and different geographical countries. I mean, we have done some solar in Ireland, believe it or not, and it actually works. The model that we've got actually works in Ireland. I've just mentioned we've set up a company in Jamaica called Elevation Energy, and that's going to be the brand we're going to use up here in Jamaica, and that has identified numerous projects already, and we're at the fundraising stage on that one. But we've also entered into a new sort of sector, I suppose, which is the largest project we've actually ever undertaken, and that's a large waste-to-energy biomass plant actually down in Barbados, which the Prime Minister of Barbados has referred to as the Green Energy Park. And what that project is we are going to burn all the municipal waste on the island, turn it into energy, and then we are also going to burn significant amounts of king cane grass as biomass.
Is that kind of similar to what we've seen kind of them starting, or they've announced in Cayman before, regarding their kind of dump and stuff like that, or is that a totally different?
It's some way similar, but ours is sort of a unified project where what we are doing is we are literally, I mean, there is a landfill in Barbados actually, that's actually on the west coast. So that landfill will be no longer. So we're capping the landfill to begin with.
Or even like, us in Jamaica with Riverton City, where there's been RFPs before, very, of course, topic. But in other words, is that kind of like what's happening in Barbados now?
It would be very much applicable to the situation here in Jamaica. In other words, every single island of what we're doing in Barbados could be transferable to every single island. So every single small island has a municipal waste issue.
So you and WCC have bigger picture aspirations in energy?
We have bigger picture aspirations outside of the PV solar in different areas, but that doesn't mean to say we're going to slow down on the PV solar side of things.
Understood.
Because the PV solar side of things, it's such a huge opportunity for the Caribbean. And it's such a huge opportunity for investors and everything too. And, because if you look at our last issuance, actually, it's interesting. Back in 2018, when we did our first green bond issuance, we had to do quite a significant roadshow, selling them to sort of family offices, high wealth individuals, because we didn't have a track record. Roll on 2021, our bonds were snapped up and bought by financial institutes, so pension funds, insurance companies. So we know the funding's there, actually.
And Barry, that's a typical, for an investor who puts their funds into Bayesian currency. I mean, similar to Jamaica, that's going to invest in Jamaican currency. It is the, kind of the regulated, it's the financial sector, it's the pensions. That's a typical investor?
As of our last bond issuance, that they were the investors. They were pension funds and insurance companies. But that some way democratizes the whole thing, because if you're selling the pension funds, you're spreading the benefits out. And we're giving fixed interest, obviously.
So it's like an annuity, long term.
That's what they are. I would exactly.
Yeah. It's not the stock market game here. It's a nice long term.
We are going to. I mean, in the Barbados case, on local currency, we were selling the bonds, or the debt, or the interest we would pay on these bonds was anywhere between 3.25% up to about 5.5%. And that was the sort of spread of the interest we were paying. And the difference really between one interest rate and the other was just the tenor of the bonds, really, the length of the bonds, and whether they were bullet bonds, non-amortizing bonds, or amortizing bonds.
Okay, but it works out for them, yeah. Absolutely.
Well, it gives them a choice, because there isn't that many fixed interest vehicles actually in the Caribbean that have got. Don't forget, we are rated, we're verified, we're certified.
And the stock market is not that big or liquid there. Yeah.
And we have massively outperformed actually our forecasts as well, which is interesting. So on the forecast that the investors, or the bondholders, originally invested, we are significantly ahead of those numbers, which gives them confidence that. And as we were actually quite conservative actually in our numbers to begin with, which gives them sort of confidence that we're going to be conservative going forward. But it's minimising the risks for them as well.
Got you. Well done. We're going to come back to that. We take another break on Business Live Extra. More with co-founder and managing director of Williams Caribbean Capital, Barry O'Brien. Welcome back to Business Live Extra. Williams Caribbean Capital has made several portfolio investments over the years since being founded. These include leading VIP attractions at our national airports in Jamaica, Irish Flexible Packaging, Fistpack Limited in Ireland, SCG Growth Partners, Williams Renewable Energy Limited, and Jamaica's General Accident Insurance in Barbados, among others. What are the future plans of WCC? For a final time, we are joined by Barry O'Brien, co-founder and managing director of Williams Caribbean Capital. Barry, welcome back to Business Live Extra.
Thank you, Barry.
You know, we were just talking about just the whole, solar and renewable energy landscape and the competitive matrix. We see a lot in Jamaica, especially about, 8 Rivers, MPC, Caribbean Clean Energy. They're listed. They went to Central America, a couple other plays. And even Tropical Battery has started something. They're public as well with CAC 2000. Are those some of the competitors, even if they're doing different numbers than you, or is that a different space?
I would consider it very much a different space to what we're in. We're a sort of an asset developer. We fund and own the assets ourselves. We're not developing them for other people as well. And we're typically here in the case of Jamaica. I mean, as we did in Barbados, it's really putting them on large commercial rooftops, as I said previously, on the whole transmission and distribution side of things, not having to take the electricity from somewhere remote to somewhere in a city, putting it in areas where the actual electricity is actually very much used. What's our exit plan for this? We really don't have an exit plan. In that, what happens in our business models is, we have a certain amount of debt, and obviously as we make money inside this, we repay some of the principals and the interest of it, and at a future time, we will own assets that don't have debt obviously inside them at that particular moment in time. But we're not.
So you're not necessarily looking for, let's say a farm in Jamaica or a large plot of land, like 100 acres, and saying, to the guy or the lady that owns it, I just want to lease this whole place and put down a solar farm. That's not your dig.
That is not our model, no.
Okay.
And there are companies out there that obviously specialize in that exact model. That is not our model.
That's right.
So what we're doing is we go up to a sort of an owner of a large building, and what we say to him is, you know what, we will fund putting solar onto your rooftops. And
are you finding, Barry, that, let's say hotels in Kingston, I don't know, or hotels on the North Coast, I'm sure there might be some companies doing it, but we haven't really heard about that a lot or any noise about that. Are there hotels that you could approach and say, look, I'll just take your entire rooftop area? Is that something that Elevate will be looking at?
Exactly. So, we are starting with more industrial companies to begin with, but hotels will be a good example, depending on their type of roofs, obviously, depending on the pitch of the roofs and the suitability for what they require. But yes, hotels would definitely be potential customers. Any owners actually of large rooftops.
Okay.
I mean, we typically don't do anything below sort of 20,000 square feet of roof space, just because of the economics behind it. And if we've got numerous customers that have got, say, 100,000 square feet here or 100,000 square feet there, we bundle them together actually in the same bond issuance or the same bond raise, rather than going to the markets actually simultaneously. Okay. But that's not to say that actually we have done some commercial debt raises as well to supplement actually some of the
government buildings, warehouses, all of this you're going to be going after.
One of the big deals we've just done actually down in Barbados actually is with the actual schools in Barbados. So we are going to put PV solar on all the secondary schools there.
Okay.
We've also put solar on multiple buildings of the Barbados Investment Development Corporation as a third party, as well as government-owned buildings as well.
Okay, got it.
So obviously replicating that model in Barbados, bringing it up here is what we're trying to achieve.
So that sounds like the modus operandi, I call it plan, the vision, the mission of the business.
Well, on the renewable energy side, on the PV solar renewable energy side of things, because we know we are going to pivot into things like batteries, and we're going to pivot into things like wind as it comes on board. It's just that some of the regulations and the actual planning permissions aren't quite in place for extensive wind or extensive batteries.
Right.
But it has to happen, actually. Yeah. It will follow, as I said earlier. Yeah. You know, the best way to look at the Caribbean as an entrepreneur is what's happened in other parts of the world. And you know, a battery solution here and needing to take away or deal with the transient nature of solar and things will have to be dealt with here in the Caribbean in the not too distant future.
And I agree with you. I mean, the QSRs, you know, the quick service restaurants, they know that. You know, they do well in North America, they've done well here in Jamaica and the Caribbean. And on your private equity plays, I mean, VIP attractions, the service is great. Clearly, they're flying. Everything's, you know, doing well again. You know, let's call it, you know, during the pandemic or a little bit, hopefully, at the tail end of the pandemic. But what about your other private equity plays? And what type of criteria are you looking for? Are you looking for SMEs? Are you looking for companies the size of Wisynco? You know, what type of EBIT are you looking for? What are you looking for out there? And are you looking to spend money this year?
Yeah, we are actually at the moment looking to spend money, which might seem big. We acquired two companies. I mean, I did 2017, 2018 working in the Caribbean. In 2019, I decided to largely sort of spend the majority of my time back in Dublin, actually. And that was because, for personal reasons, actually, my son got sick, actually.
Okay.
And
sorry to hear.
Yeah. So we moved back, and so I started looking at the private equity markets over in Ireland, and we acquired a company called Iris Flexible Packaging. The three principals actually of the business in Ireland, that's the three principals, sort of managers, are myself basically. A guy called Kieran Burkov, I've mentioned, a guy called David Staples, who's actually chairman of WCC as well.
Okay.
And so we started looking at opportunities in Ireland. February 2019, very quickly after returning, we acquired Iris Flexible Packaging. We acquired another business called FizzPack. To give you a quantum, these are sort of about 20 million euro type businesses.
In top line?
In top line, yes.
In top line. And is there an affinity towards packaging companies, because whether it's your expertise or one of the guys' expertise, or not necessarily?
Not necessarily. They did fit very much into that sort of ESG areas that, you know, we wouldn't have bought a plastic company. The fact that these were doing sustainable packaging, trying to replace plastic bags for the likes of bread packaging and things, definitely meant that they fit in. They fitted into our criteria of an impact investor.
Okay.
And but as for the industry, I mean, you know, I come from a telco background, but inside Digicel, at one stage, I think I sat on over 30 boards, and unbeknown, I think, to a lot of people, there was a lot of other businesses that Dennis had invested in as well, or Digicel had invested in a way being one of them, as an example.
Yes.
Weren't really telco businesses.
Is there any particular sector you want to, you know, focus on, or, you know, right now you're in tourism, you're in packaging, a little bit of manufacturing plays into food, renewable energy, or is it kind of, you know, broad-based?
The criteria really that we've got is we've got a team of people who are in the investors, and they include myself, they include Kieran Burke, they include David Hall, who I mentioned previously, they include another person, Irish person who spent a lot of time here in Jamaica, a guy called Aidan Heavey, actually, a guy called Victor Corcoran, busy and things. So we're really looking for sort of businesses that we feel with our skills and
your collective skills.
Our collective skills that, you know, given the amount of operational sort of years we've spent managing operational companies as sort of CEOs and CFOs.
So collectively, you can really heavy lift the business. You can turn it around, or
get in under the newts and sort of, you know, figure out how we could maybe improve that business as an oversight type role rather than now as a sort of a direct CEO type of role inside there. And that's what, and size-wise, it's sort of anything above sort of 5 million EBITDA is probably too big for us. So it's sort of up to that sort of 5 million EBITDA type mark is where our
up to 5 million. Okay.
Up to 5 million. And the reason I didn't give a lower end is because when we bought Irish Flexible Packaging, it was making a lot of money. The second company we bought, which was FizzPack, was actually losing money.
And you know, Barry, even with the Irish plays, are you typically exiting to another buyer, or are you IPOing the companies, or you know, what's the market like there in Ireland, and even with the VIP attractions? Is it a secondary market sale, or are you taking it on a junior market here or the main market here? What's kind of the outlook to get your return for you and your investors?
You know, that's an interesting one. Because we're not a private equity company, we don't have external investors. So we're unusual in being a company that we are not beholding to any sort of external money outside of debt.
You might be happy with your dividends.
Exactly, yeah, which is another way of looking at it. So we don't really have a sort of time frame like your typical private equity companies might be 7 to 9 years. But in the case of the Irish companies, we were about to buy some companies in the UK that were actually substantially bigger than us when this large US private equity company, Pitzer Private Capital, one of their subsidiaries, a company called ProAmpac, knocked on our door and they said, we'd be interested in your business. And while we weren't expecting to sell, the price they offered was attractive, and we decided to sell, actually. And as part of the deal, we are helping ProAmpac now expand their business into Europe.
And to be clear, you sold
the 2 Irish businesses.
The 2 Irish packaging businesses.
Yes, we sold them to
100% or
100%. Yes.
Okay.
But we reinvested back into them as well.
So in a case like that, no, you've got to exit.
We have exited, which is always good from an investment business to actually have shown that you've realized.
You build your track record, and you're still just within 5 years of starting.
We'll be 5 years in July of this year, so you know, it's good to. We obviously did very well out of the deal, and what we did wasn't, you know, when I look back and if somebody asks me, you know, we nearly doubled the actual net profits of the business in 2 and a bit years.
Precisely, yeah.
And you asked me how we did it.
And you attribute that to really the operational skill sets, all of you getting your hands dirty and getting in the business?
Just basic skills type sets of, you know, getting the companies to understand their margins by product, by customer, what's loss leading, what's making money, rationalizing the daily, weekly type KPIs. And I would have done a lot of that myself, actually, for the 2 packaging companies. And you might ask, I knew almost nothing about food packaging before I got in there. But I did understand that I need to know my margins by product, by customer, and I need that on a regular basis. And the other thing has been open with your sort of staff. And, you know, we gave the staff, well, I'm the senior staff, this is now complete access to the P&L and things, and incentivize them to drive the right culture.
Transparency, governance, yeah.
And it changed the business, and hence we did well out of it. But the plan originally wasn't a sort of quick in, quick out. The plan was to sort of take this business and get us to 100 million sometime in the future.
Understood.
But you've got to be opportunist and think of it.
You got a good offer. Yeah. And Barry, tell me, the future for you, WCC, and you're giving back in a way. You know, you have a Caribbean background, a Jamaican background. You're honorary consul to Ireland. You know, not how it came about, but what does that mean to you? And the future for you and WCC as you see it?
No, I'm really honoured, actually, to be the honorary consul from Jamaica and Ireland. And, you know, it gives me that connection back. And the big thing and my big objective is, and I've had some successes, is really to help with bilateral trade and things, because that's really my background. I'm not from a diplomatic background. So, and
you're active in it presently? Active in it presently.
I mean, it's... you know, I interface back into JAMPRO in particular. When, you know, in Ireland, actually, it's an interesting. We've an organisation called Enterprise Ireland, and they can give out new market grants and things. So I've been encouraging people to sort of look at Jamaica, somewhere they can invest in, or any Jamaicans who've looked at how they might break into the Irish market, giving that advice. And there's about 400 or 500 Jamaicans, actually, who would be first-generation Jamaicans, actually, living in Ireland as well.
Okay. So really, you try and help with investments both ways?
Both ways, bilaterally, yes.
Okay.
It sort of makes sense for me. And sort of, you know, I get involved with some of the community there as well in certain events. And it's interesting because there's a lot of sort of Digicel people who've now returned to Ireland who have this real love for Jamaica. I mean, the experience and the welcomes we got here
Okay.
We're tremendous, and it's just to give back even a very little bit, actually, and whatever we can do to assist. And I actually enjoy doing it, actually. It's,
okay.
You know, it's one of these things that bilateral trade, how do we, and Ireland's a fairly small country, but, and so is Jamaica, obviously relative. One's got 3 million population, one's got 5 million population, and outside of Digicel, there hadn't been much bilateral trade in both directions. So, companies like Argo Development that I mentioned previously, that I'm the chairman of, that's come in as an architectural firm inside here now. It did the PAHO building recently down in Ocherias and things as well. And obviously David Hall and his VIP attractions, let's not leave that off as well. So it's to see what can be done.
And in the role, are you also trying to bring in more foreign direct investment, or at least introductions or so?
That's what it is. And I mean, from a Jamaican perspective, it's trying to get Irish investors to invest in Jamaica.
Perfect.
And if any Jamaicans are looking to actually enter the Irish market, they've got a sort of a beachhead of somebody who can help them. It could potentially put them in touch with people in the Irish business community, be that supermarkets, retailers, distributors, whatever might make sense for them actually. And we do a lot of licensing and things as well. So Irish guys trying to ship out to Jamaica, we've got some conformance documentation and things, and not an awful lot on the visa side, because Irish people don't need visas to actually go to Jamaica, except for extended stays. So that's not a huge issue, even though sometimes the role gets slightly confused, because I think my counterpart here in Jamaica is probably somebody you know yourself, one of the partners inside PwC, somebody called Brian Denny. So he does it the other way around. So he's Ireland's representative over here.
All right.
But you know, it keeps the connection strong, and you know, anytime you can give back a little bit, that's great.
That's good. Well, congratulations on Williams Caribbean Capital and for being an honorary consul to Ireland for Jamaica.
Thank you very much, Mark.
And it's been great having you on Business Live Extra. Yeah.
And it's been a real pleasure talking to you as always.
Good stuff. That's it for another edition of Business Live Extra. Remember, investing in your energy is an investment in life. We've been talking with Barry O'Brien, co-founder and managing director of Williams Caribbean Capital. Don't forget, you can watch us online at cvm.com/videos/Business Live Extra. Thanks for joining us.